Our next speaker is Professor Tao Ran, Director of the China Center for Public Economics and Governance at Renmin University in Beijing. Welcome, Tao.
Nice to be here, and I will talk about six, China's development model and urbanization, what's going on there. My talk actually will be relatively analytical. I'm an economist, but I will try to make it understandable. Okay, let's to understand China's urbanization model is you cannot, pretend. You have to understand China's present growth model. Let me just show you what the growth model is. The growth model in the last 2 decades did bear the birthmark of typical Eastern Asian development states. What does that mean? That means a growth-oriented autocrat reinforced a very pro-business regime through labor suppression, financial repression, and industrial policies, like that Japan, South Korea, and to some extent Taiwan. These measures also made its products competitive in the international markets, a necessity to compensate for domestic fragility. But China is not just a supersized Taiwan or Korea. I will show you in a figure. I mean, China's reliance on investment and suppression of consumption since the middle 1990s were extreme, even by Eastern Asian standards. Okay, this aggressive developmentalism was a result of fierce competition for investment, especially for manufacturing business among Chinese local governments. This is actually investment as a share of GDP by year. Okay, the world average invest about 20 to 30% of the every year GDP. Okay, South Korea, Japan higher, but China even higher. Okay, the red one. The opposite of the story is that, okay, the world spends about 60 to 70% of the GDP on consumption. South Korea, Japan lower, China even lower. That's very extreme for a huge country. For a large country, I mean smaller countries, more or less understandable. But for a huge country like China, this is really extreme. So let me start with a puzzle. Okay. So why the Chinese government are so aggressive in competing manufacturing investments, and why do they invest so much? Okay, there was in 1994 there's a tax sharing reform, essentially re-centralized budgetary revenues and allow the central government to control more spending. Actually, in China, local government or the government introduced a value-added tax on manufacturing. Okay, and then there's a business tax on service sector. These are two major taxes. Before 1994, the central revenue share was less than 30. After it jumped to 60. Okay, value-added tax is at that time was by far the largest tax in China, and the central government takes 75% of it. So the puzzle is that why, after this revenue centralization, one does not find less government incentive in promoting economic growth. Actually, it's exactly after middle 1990s and starting in late 1990s and early 2000s, the local governments in China began to build huge industrial park. Okay, and attract business. But as I just mentioned, 75% of the value-added tax on manufacturing goes to central government. Why local governments want to do this? Okay, of course you can argue that, okay, they were under huge physical pressure, so they want to, reach the bottom and earn more, but you can always do less and spend less, right? Okay, so if you make an analogy of mafia, if I'm a head of mafia, you're the guy who collects protection fee for me. Used to be 5.5, now I said it's 7.3. You will have less incentive. You will work less hard, right? Okay. So why did local governments work less hard? They work even harder. Okay. So as I say, if you look at local revenue, okay, Y is the output, okay, T is the tax rate, alpha is local share. So local revenue is alpha times T times Y. Alpha decrease, local incentive should decrease if other things stay unchanged, but other things also change. Tax rates grow very fast, so local effective tax rate on manufacturing has remained largely unchanged. But then come for next puzzle, when tax rates increase, firms tend to produce less. But you saw China become the world, the workshop of the world factory, right? Okay, so you didn't see enterprise produce less, they produce more. What happened? Why did we see Y growing even faster, manufacturing? Okay, because other things have also changed. I'm arguing that the central government and local governments, they all take different actions, okay, that help enterprise to grow, that more than offset a negative impact of higher tax rates on the output. What does the central government do? The central government depreciates renminbi by 40%. That makes Chinese products very competitive. Okay, so people want to invest in manufacturing. Local government, what do? They began to provide different non-tax preferential conditions, like cheap land, farmers that they can grab from farmers through a land acquisition system. They relax their, regulation on labor so that firms don't need to pay the insurance, and also environmental standard. This kind of non-tax instruments that will hurt the society, but reduce the cost for manufacturing investments. So let me just show you, my understanding of the Chinese growth model through this. How should I? Okay. So you see what's local government do in China. Okay. So there's the financial sector, largely state-owned. Okay. That's lay lend money first to local government. So that's these guys lay requisition land from farmers at relatively low price, right? And then they pay the infrastructure. After they pay the infrastructure, they lease the land out. Usually the land price they lease out to the manufacturing investors is lower than the requisition cost plus the infrastructure cost. That means the land price is effectively negative. But then, and then, but where do they make their money back? Okay, these guys pay value-added tax, but 75% of it go to the central government. So they only get 25%. That will not help explain why they go so extreme. So they only get 25% of the VAT, but that's not the whole story. Think about the city. If there's no manufacturing, there will be no demand for these services, housing, shopping malls, residential land. Okay, and service sector. So there's a spillover. There's a spillover from manufacturing to service sector. Okay, and service sector pay tax. They also pay very high land leasing fees for residential commercial land, and the local government monopolize because this service sector they produce non-tradable goods. Basically, you have to use the land in London if you want to sell your house, to London residents. Local government knew that. They monopolize the land, auction, and supply residential commercial land to get high fees. So local governments in China, they are internalizing the spillover from manufacturing to service sector. Okay, so the fact that they can get revenue, after the local manufacturing growth that would lead to more revenue for service business tax as land leasing fees for residential commercial sector. They would rather make the land leasing for manufacturing cheaper. Okay, you couldn't do that in a country, for example, like Japan, that's both, farmers could directly negotiate a deal with manufacturing land user or residential land users. So basically, if you saw in Japan, their residential commercial land is about twice as much as manufacturing land. Manufacturing land is positive price. No one wants to give up manufacturing land for free, right? But in China, they could do that. In China now, residential commercial land 6 times as much as manufacturing land price. And then you saw what happened is that China, okay, with this model, okay, this is growing very fast. Okay, consumer goods manufacturing exports a lot. Okay, and a lot of migrants come to the cities, and so you have very high population growth in the cities, largely driven by immigrants from the countryside, migrants. But the urban space growth, urban expansion, spatial expansion is even faster. It's about twice as much. Okay. However, half of the land is used for industry, and 20, for infrastructure, and then only 30 for residential land. Local governments oversupplying manufacturing land at very cheap rates, but undersupplying residential land, by auctions. So you have a very in most countries when they urbanize, it's most 20% land for manufacturing, most of land used for residential. China just the opposite. I just don't want to repeat the figures. So usually, if you look at this model, is that so local government borrow money through local investment platforms from state-owned sector, from state-owned banks, and only when after they build an industry park and then manufacturing come and then spill over to manufacturing, only when they get money from here they're able to pay to the banks, right? Okay. So what happened after 2008 when the financial crisis came? The central government panicked by install a very huge stimulus package, just as Japanese government did after 1988, when the Japanese yen appreciated 100% within 1 or 2 years. Okay, the export was not growing, as fast. Okay, and then the central government installed this huge financial and physical expansion. So where did the money go? The money first goes to a lot of central enterprises. Some of them actually provide energy, mineral resources, to raw material to this downstream consumer goods sector. But these are relatively monopoly company. Okay, they borrow money, they purchase material or coal or mines all over the world and within China. And some of them also use the money to speculate on the local government's under control or undersupplied residential land. So you saw housing bubble begin to emerge in all tiers of the cities in China. Okay. Some of the money also went to the local government. Okay. Who built actually even more industrial parks? I'll be quick. Okay. Who built even more industrial parks? You would ask, is that crazy? Because world financial crisis means there will be no prospect for 20% growth of exports every year. Why do you build more industrial parks? Actually, the industrial land leasing was even larger. Okay, in almost every county in inland China, they began to build more industrial parks. But there's already overcapacity. Why they build more industrial parks? Explanation is that by borrow money from state-owned sector, right? So how to explain that? How to rationalize that? Okay, first, First, remember with this stimulus package, you have a housing bubble everywhere that give local governments an illusion that this bubble will continue. We'll have a lot of money to pay back and build industrial parks. So that's what this bubble do to local government, give them physical illusion, and they want to borrow. Second is the central government who encourages to lend to borrow. Okay, and the state bank. If we borrow money to build industrial parks, at least we got some infrastructure and some perhaps kickbacks, But if we cannot pay back, this is state-owned bank. The central government will have to pay, rescue. Otherwise, the whole system will collapse. So that's why local government's debt in China. In 2008, 5 trillion. 2010, 10 trillion. Now, principal and interest rates, 20 trillion. Huge debt, and also huge housing bubble. This bubble cannot continue. Okay, and local central government also realize this is very risky, so they stop the lending to the local government. Now they try to stop the lending. When this cash-starving local government, could not continue to borrow from banks, what will they do? They will have to sell this residential land faster. But there's already housing bubble. That will elicit a chain of bubble bursts, financial crisis and economic crisis. I think I will stop here. The reform, the prospect for reform is very limited. But there are ways to do it, but I will stop here. And I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay, I will stop this. Thank you.